So this whole show is about, cultural misunderstandings, kind of navigating a new environment. Do you have any like standout moments where you like sit up at night and cringe over a time where you misunderstood the vibe culturally or just in general?
When I was young, and when I was 5 years old, I moved from England to Los Angeles. And my first day of school, I this is more of like a language kind of an accent difference, but I was the new girl brought into first grade, and I had a very sweet but specific, strong British accent, and I was trying to say all the names of my classmates, and I just pronounced vowels in a very different way. And R's were like as instead of R. And so I got made fun of. And so I quickly realized, I was like, okay, I want to fit in, and then of course years later you're going, oh God, I wish I still had that accent.
Yeah.
But it was more of that kind of shock of, oh wow, I feel so different right now, a little fish out of water. And especially as a kid, that's a very poignant moment in your life when you're just like, I just want to fit in.
Yeah, they're relentless. But so I feel like with Emily though, she's kind of unapologetic about the things that make her different, if that makes sense, even if
Yeah.
everyone's judging. Why do you think that was such an important aspect of her character to include?
I love that you said that, because one of the things that I really loved about Emily is that she is unapologetically herself, right? She's bold, she's bright, she's a little bit obvious, and she embraces that, whether it's in her fashion or in her emotions or in the way that she speaks or the way that she just is as a person. And she's genuinely that way. And so some people might think, oh, that's annoying. Whereas in fact, it's like, no, it's just endearing, because that's who Emily is. And something I loved about the show is that we don't have this transformation scene where Emily comes to Paris, right, as an American, goes into a dressing room, comes out as Parisian in a sense, and all of a sudden is accepted and embraced. She is very much who she is, physically with her style, as well as internally and with her drive and her morals. And she learns new things along the way through her experiences, through the people that she meets, and she teaches people things as well. And I think that mutual experience is what helps define her, which is what helps shape and define her in her journey. But she doesn't change as Emily. And I really loved that, because I think it would be a real unfortunate thing to have this character need to feel that she needed to change who she was in order to all of a sudden fit in.
Yeah, that's a great message actually. Now keeping. But
Thanks.
if she runs this cool Instagram account, obviously that pops off while she's in Paris. If you had to open a second account and cover anything, whether it's travel, food, what would you want to focus on?
Travel.
Yeah.
I'd want to focus on travel now more than ever. I think I started following way more cabins and travel locations accounts since being in quarantine. And I think there's just something, obviously there's a wish fulfillment quality and a magic to being able to look at photos and feel like you're there. And another reason why I'm actually really happy that Emily's coming out now at a time where we just want to escape in a sense and travel. And I just keep writing lists of one day, like I want to go here, I want to go here. And so I think that it would be really fun to, obviously get to travel to those places and kind of document it, like a travel diary type of thing.
I feel like people would like that. I'll look forward to a billion cabins everywhere. Account.
Yes, who knows one day.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Annabelle. Thank you so much.
So the show is definitely a very exciting fish out of water experience. And I was talking to Luca, and he was saying for non-English speakers, oftentimes they feel like their entire personalities aren't being showcased in maybe American environments. Why do you think that this kind of flipping that interaction is important on this show?
I mean, it's part of the reason why I wanted to do the show, was to give sort of this vision of an American living an expatriate life. And I feel like we don't travel as much as we do, but I don't think we don't leave the States to travel and live in other countries as much as other countries come to live in the States. So I thought it's a real life expanding experience to do that. And I wanted to sort of take a character on that journey.
Definitely. And oftentimes when we do travel, it's like people are catering to us. And
Right.
I like how on this show they weren't really catering to her. She had to.
No, I mean, she was living and working there, and part of it was that it wasn't her intention to go there. She went there for, a job, for a career opportunity, without really thinking about what it meant, and 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 like what it would mean to go there and not really speak French. Sort of took her American, I don't want to say superiority, but the idea that everybody must speak English, everybody must be like we are, for granted until she got there.
And there's a really cool aspect of the show that she's kind of a growing influencer in a way. Did you do any research on that entire culture to kind of shape her in that sense?
I mean, I have friends that are influencers, but I kind of feel like you don't have to do research into influencers. I feel like they have like taken over our lives. So it's, we're living in their world now. So in a sense, it was like kind of bringing that in, because it's such a big part of, I feel like, as somebody whose expertise is social media, what she would be doing. And just the idea that she's sharing her experiences on Instagram, that's, to me, is like a wonderful part of social media, is that you get to communicate with your friends in the world. But then how her experience of being there in Paris kind of like drew all this interest from people to live vicariously through her and her posts. And it helped her in a way navigate and understand what she was. It's kind of like a journal for her.
Yeah, definitely. If it was putting Sex in the City in 2020 and Carrie Bradshaw had a Instagram account instead of a column, what do you think the title would be? Would it still be Sex and the City, or?
I don't know. I think Sex and the City is a product of its time, and I don't think that show would be Sex and the City. I think it would just be something completely different.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you want people to take away? What's the number one thing you want viewers to come away from this show with?
To me, a passion for travel, for taking a risk, for leaving home and seeing the world a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I left it with wanting to go somewhere, so I feel like you've got.
We all want to do that right now.
Yeah,
more than anything. Yeah.
sure. Thank you so much for
Thank
talking.
you. Nice to talk to you.
Have a great one.
Too. Bye-bye.
Such an probably the most electric character in this. Just a new thing revealed every episode that's just bizarre about her. So how did you create her, and how did you start developing her like on your own time? Because there's so much with her that's like the Zipper King. She's been all over the world. She's a nanny. It's just so many different aspects to consider.
Totally. Well, I think that I connected with her on a very base level first because a lot of the parts of our like material life are very different. Like I'm certainly not an heiress and world traveled, my time in Paris is one of my first times like really living abroad. So for me, the first thing about Mindy was just that she's just a really great friend and it comes effortless to her, and she's free spirited and she's spontaneous and she's a problem solver. And so that was really easy for me to tap into. And I think what was great is that the writers and Darren were living in Paris with us and they were watching us. And after they cast, they kind of saw how all our chemistry was with each other and ourselves. And they really started to let us build that world and the language of the character with them.
Definitely. Going from Gretchen Wiener's toaster strudel to Zipper King, was that intentional or was that like fully just a coincidence?
Oh my God, I never even realized that until this very moment.
Like,
you know why? It's because in the musical, there isn't the toaster strudel thing.
Okay, you're still...
Totally, but like she's still very similar to that character. I'm sure in that show still, I still say Jewish Princess Jesus or something, and she's very, definitely. But that is funny. I didn't even think of it that way.
While in Paris, did you have any this show's really big on like cultural misunderstandings being a huge drive? Were there any experiences you had that make you like cringe at night where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe?
Oh, I mean, every single thing that happens to her, I made that mistake at some point, like the dates being reversed, military time, like doing like subtracting 12 wrong, like everything really, except for the difference was that I always had really lovely people around me and French friends who were very supportive and helpful in that. But I definitely had some of the goof ups that Emily did. Oh, I also stepped in poop, but it was real poop and not prop poop.
That can happen anywhere, so it's like definitely. And were there any characters besides your own that you particularly connected to watching this or reading the script, or you found more like you?
Well, I think what's so fun about especially in like the love triangle aspect, and you know, I really connect with Emily. I love something she says at the beginning, at the end of the pilot, where she's like, I love my work, and why is ambition a bad thing? And I totally agree with the not laissez-faire, but the flaneur attitude and like laid back attitude of the French. But I feel that way too. You know, I've never been one to separate my work life from my social and personal life too. And I love that because I love my work. So I think I see a lot of myself in Emily, maybe not as uptight as she is sometimes. And I think all the feelings that she feels and Gabrielle feel for each other, and how she feels guilty with like we've all had those kinds of feelings, you know. So I definitely think it's relatable.
Definitely. Awesome. So I'm so excited for everyone to see it. It's a great show. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
So being on this project, it's kind of a cultural fusion, I guess. Did you feel any responsibility as a Frenchman to, contribute any advice?
I feel like I'm more of a citizen of the world. I've been traveling a lot as a kid, and even after that. So even though I'm French, I'm supposed to embody that nationality. I felt more drawn to Gabrielle's personal history without even thinking about the fact that he's French, because we have all those other characters that embody that French set of mind, and some of the cliches that make the French culture so funny, you know. But no, I just wanted to tell that love story, that story about this lost guy in Paris who's trying to find a solution for his goals and doesn't want help and feels emasculated by his girlfriend, and sees that, light at the end of the tunnel on his doorstep, and tries to follow it, even though all his principles and values are going down the trash. But he just wants to feel alive again because he's been sad for a while.
Yeah, definitely. That's a cool perspective on his character, because he's obviously, when we're first presented with him, he's very much like the typical kind of, love interest, and then there's definitely more to explore. Being a citizen of the world, as you say, have you ever had moments like Emily where you kind of feel like an intruder in a different culture, or you feel like you're not saying the right thing?
Yeah, pretty much every time I speak and I'm outside of Paris, outside of France, because I tend to judge myself a little too much. So I always, when you speak another language and you lack words and vocabulary, you feel like people don't really see your character, or you're not able to express. Language is a part of your identity. So I felt that when I lived in LA for 5 years, and when I've moved there, I felt really frustrated not being able to show my colors and my real personality. And I thought I was just trying to make myself, understandable, but not showing that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we never really see it from the American perspective. It's usually like everyone else is the foreigner. Now we're seeing kind of an American English sort of person trying to navigate not understanding. So Darren's work obviously has a very consistent tone. Are you a fan of like any of his other stuff, and how did you become introduced to his things?
Yes, I'm a fan. Honestly, I love Sex and the City. I watched it maybe 3, 4 times. I watched it again before I started the show, pinching myself when his name was coming on screen, knowing that I was about to work with him. And it's just, I love the opportunity to just rediscover my own city through his vision, and to work in his magic bubble where everybody was family and everybody was so chic and nice and sexual, and I loved every second of it. And it was working with Darren really made me feel like this is why I chose to do what I do, because it was fun all the way.
Yeah. And last question, if you had anything that you want someone to take away from this project, or you want viewers to see, what is that? What's your takeaway goal for people?
I really hope it's gonna, as a traveler, I heard so many times, oh, I don't think it's for me. I'm afraid to leave my family. I'm not sure. I'm confident. I hope it's gonna push people to see that the world is not as bad as we paint it to be, and to just expand and just step out of your comfort zone, because this is where the magic happens. I know it's a cliche sentence, but it's real. You know, this is where your brain is just, you aren't stuck into the nostalgia of the past or the anxiety of the future. You're just here now, and you're open to any possibility because you're traveling, and that's a risk you need to take if you want to grow, I think. So I hope this show is gonna give that little push. I heard so many times today, oh, that makes me want to go to Paris, that makes me want to book my ticket now, and that makes me so happy, because that's honestly the goal.
Definitely. Post-pandemic, I'm on Airbnb. Thank you so much for talking to me
Thank
today.
you.
Hope you have a
Thank
great
you so much.